Cool. So we got a few folks here, maybe a few more trickle in. My name is Helios. Up on stage, we got Maxwell as our guest today, which we want to dive into a bit. His knowledge, providing a lot of the code contribution and recently the staking for the co-contributors rewards. MysticMarks also up here, and Anton and Smart Agents. So I want to thank you all just for spending a little bit of time. We're going to try to make every other Friday an opportunity to have a call like this, just with everybody. And if you ever have a question that you want asked, you can type it in. You can come up on stage towards the end. We'll have some time for that. Or if you're listening to the recording, you can always just leave it in general chat and we get back to it, or save it for another call that comes up. And as well, if you have a kind of topic or something you think is worth discussing, or anybody wants more information on, definitely let us know. Let anybody with a red name know, or just let it be known, and we'll find it eventually. Things you think could use some discussion, things that could use a little more clarity, anything that's not certain how something works is worth having one of these calls. And that's the idea, where we'll try to get it to be kind of regular. Every other Friday seems good around this time. So today we have one of our code providers up, Maxwell, and among others of the crew. And we wanted to get into, last time we talked about the staking rewards, staking the Morpheus rewards for capital providing, which means as you provide capital, you're getting more tokens. And now there is a feature in the protocol to stake those for the future and get a weight. That is also possible now for those who provided code. So just wanted to give Maxwell some time to maybe introduce yourself, like what you've been working on with making this infrastructure, about code, and then I do have some questions around it, and we can kind of break down what's happening on the code provider scene. Anton and I just shared this in the Dune dashboard on general chat. We can see like even the code providers are claiming less more. So there's a few things I want to dive into, but Maxwell, if you just want to kick us off and give us some ideas about what's happening in the code world, what is this update about staking the rewards? Feel free to let us know.
Well, thank you. The biggest, I guess, addition to the code world is this weight staking on more.software. And to define more.software a little bit more, it's been something in the works with the people over at Maxon, and the success criteria for more.software is a little bit more than just a regular dashboard because of the audience and the project. So what it has to be is transparent, visible, decentralized, anonymous when necessary, but it also has to tie into the rewards as they are revealed. So it took a little bit, but the use of GitHub as a backend and also using that as a means to justify or check what's on blockchain is how we got to this success criteria. Now that that's been accomplished, and we can go into that later, we are rolling out with the weight staking. So as everybody here knows, if a developer is rewarded in weights, those are the weights that produce tokens, and the staking of those weights is basically putting a claim lock as to when they are going to claim those tokens that are being generated. So very similar to the capital version of it.
And thank you, Maxwell. If you want to just maybe even comment a bit about weights, I know it's been discussed before, but for someone who isn't providing code, like some people may just be providing capital. Some people maybe want to build in the future or run a node. What is this idea of weights, and the people and anyone who is contributing code to the protocol, how they're being rewarded in this bucket of code versus capital versus builder and node?
Well, this is one of the most exciting things to come out of the white paper is the ability to reward developers in a way that makes it true value both to the project and something that can be open source as well. So the what the white paper calls for is that the emissions every day are split into different buckets, and a portion of those buckets is then divided amongst the developers who are contributing to the core of the Morpheus project, and specifically not building apps or front ends or projects that are either more 20 or either NFA projects or smart agents or something else that can benefit from the staking as a whole, using it as a monetization tool. So to do that, stakes existed in the white paper as something that allows for a developer to contribute code and then receive those emissions on a daily basis. And what that all boils down to is that open source contributors can actually make a living contributing to Morpheus. So that is starting to happen more often than not, and it's good to see.
Very nice. And what if, what if someone did join the project? I saw just in general the other day, someone said, "Hey, gonna speak to somebody on the BD team. I'm a programmer." What would be that process for someone to kind of find some things to do or find some code to modify? Like, how can someone be a part of, become a code contributor?
This is the next exciting thing to come to more.software, and that is, as MRCs are built and as requests from maintainers are created, everything's going to be listed there for people to bid on. Right now, we have a series of forms in Google Forms that exist for people to request weights in order to do something. That is being elevated and evolved into a tool that allows for everybody to see what projects are available. So right now, if you wanted to suggest something, you would go to the Google form and you would suggest it and request a bid for weights. So let's say you had an idea, you said, look, I think this should be in purple. So you request the weights. I need X amount of weights in order to make it purple. And I'd like those weights to be consistent for, let's say, 90 days, where as long as it remains purple, they are maintaining everything that they build perfectly. I mean, the pristine nature of how something needs to be maintained cannot be undersold. But as long as everything's great, they're going to get those weights for that amount of time. And while they have those weights, they'll be producing tokens, and that is revenue for them, unless they choose to stake it, which is obviously, I don't have to tell this crowd, a very good idea.
Very nice. So to reiterate that the MRCs, which there's a channel in the Discord dedicated to them, MRC 20 chat. That's going to be a way to kind of aggregate basically work that should or is recommended to do.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's a much better way of putting it. I like when you do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because as more people do find the project, they'll be like, hey, okay, I got some of this skill, I have some time, I would like to contribute, I have a certain passion in this or that field, or let's say particularly for code, they know this part of the stack, they know that part of the stack, and they want a way to kind of plug in and get involved. Maxwell, while we have you up here, normally we're just kind of picking David's brain, like, what was it like for you to go? Sorry, oh geez. What was it like for you to start as a community member and make your way into contributing, and like your process of finding where you can plug in? Sorry for the background noise.
No problem. The one great thing about Morpheus is there's never a lack of things to do or build or work on. And my journey started right about the time that the white paper became a thing, and was working on smart agents with David a little bit, and just sort of put my head down and haven't stopped. So the early iterations of the light client were things that were built in Electron, sort of out of this shop, and ever since then, just working to create more code opportunities and tools for people to build code, because it's all about, pardon me, the multiplier. We went from a situation where it was proof of concept on the project to how do we multiply the amount of developers and get them working, which is why it's going to be exciting that the MRC-based features in more.software will also be something that other projects can use to aggregate developers. This will be a community of people who are able to make weights work for them. And I think it's going to be a open pasture for developers to control how they make their money in the future.
Very cool. And actually, this kind of segues I want to lead into. And if David, you want to add into anything, like what do you think with that kind of mindset of making basically a field where code providers or people who are very interested in AI, in coding, in Web3, and they want to add something in, and they like what's going on with the white paper. Where do you guys see the future of code providing going?
So I think
Go ahead.
Maxwell's described it. I think Maxwell described it really well, which is, effectively people can propose any improvement. They can get feedback from the repo maintainers, on how to build that, and whether that's something they want to include in the reference implementation. I'd like to see that continue to decentralize. Right now, there's 10 reference implementations in Morpheus, so all the different repos. And so seeing more maintainers step up, more people, helping coordinate developers that want to contribute to the protocol is great. But to Maxwell's point, when builder rewards come online, then any party that wants to create an interface or a dashboard or sort of all these community facing aspects will be able to do that, and people will be able to stake directly towards them. Right. So the builder awards just sort of add a whole new dimension for third-party applications and smart agents. Anybody wants to build that would be able to get directly rewarded by Morpheus stakers staking towards their projects. So, like, I can't wait till I can stake part of my more towards Venice, right, and support what they're doing, right, and Noun Space and a bunch of others. So yeah, that's coming up. That's coming up soon. But that's a useful differentiation, right? You should think of the builder rewards as people building in the ecosystem. You should think of the coding rewards as people contributing to the Morpheus reference implementation.
Incredibly excited to see how the developer community adopts this, because from a lifestyle as a developer standpoint, this would make life easier. Less dealing with clients, less having to chase people for money. And I think we're only seeing the beginning of that opportunity.
Sure. And like you said, this is a generalized tool that every project building on Morpheus can then use, right? These are open source dashboards, they're open source websites, they're open source, coding tools for people to pick up so they can, reward developers in their own community, right? And have all these tools to track those contributions, to, use a marketplace, right, for code. And to Maxwell's point, I'd love to see hundreds, eventually thousands of code contributors, realize they can earn not just from Morpheus, but from Noun Space and Venice and all these other projects to open up their open source process for contributions, right? So once you're connected into Morpheus, you have effectively unlimited opportunities to contribute and earn.
I like
So
that distinction. Yeah, I think that's a really cool distinction about builders are going to be building with the tools, and what we see now as the code providers are the people that are providing the tool set. And when there is a group of tools that we could use, which is the repo, then builders can go ahead and add and plug those things in. Like the blocks are being made by the code providers, and the builders are using the blocks to make more stuff. I think that's a really cool way to look at it. And MysticMarks, I wanted to know, you've been working on some stuff as well around this, basically helping it become more easy for someone who wants to build blocks, being the code, as opposed to someone who wants to build like a house, which is what the builders will do with the blocks. What are your thoughts about making this process easy or trying to get uh, basically opening it up to this? I like this imagery of a pasture where it's just a field and you can come in and you can do some of your work so that coders who are finding out about the project can kind of get more directly involved if they're really like hungry to get involved and build and code.
Yeah, great, man. It's really about integrating, and this is kind of that cutting edge of all of it with the DeFi bringing in the AI, so it's all new. Max has been going hard, losing his mind, making great systems advancements. But I think really the thing is once it's iced out and everybody knows how the more 20s will work, so that the lead developers can drop in their prototype work, and then the whole community can get involved on each of those approved projects, right? So that's the point that I feel like everybody can start contributing, because then all of the calls for tickets will be available for people to bid on. And I think that the real value will grow quickly is once the community is able to do that, and that's not far off here. So that's going to be the big thing. And there's going to be a lot of different UIs, front ends, and being able to get the servicing for the tokenization to run well so that the network works good. That's still all stuff that's getting fleshed out. So given that's all done, I think people will be able to latch on to the approved projects pretty quickly. Don't want to throw Max under the tire here, but he knows what's going on with all that. Him and I are working back and forth on my side, and he's working with like a multi-headed snake with everybody, of course.
Again, I love the way you put that. This opportunity is, the way I see it, a tool to build something for someone just like you, someone who can take a very large concept and introduce it to people who can write the code to make it happen and do it in the MRC fashion. It's going to create so much good code so quickly. I don't even know how to even gauge it. I haven't even started looking at analytics. Why bother? It's going to go through the roof. So if we succeed, you are able to bring the concepts that I have seen you come up with to people who go, oh yeah, that's not a problem, hold my beer, and go write the code. So I'm glad to hear you say that.
Very nice. Exactly. And so maybe, a question for all three of you is, if we look at some of these statistics, like you guys are in the trenches, as they say, with the code. I myself don't know anything about code. I've made an HTML website. But if we look at some of these statistics, I think it's interesting where the unique claimers, I'm on the Dune dashboard, which I shared in general. And for anyone listening, this will be recorded, so you can also check this out, Dune dashboard. And side note, if anyone has a question, feel free to, you can start raising your hand or add them in the chat, and we'll get to you in a bit. Yeah, how do you guys feel about some of these statistics, and what does it indicate to you as the individuals writing the code? Unique claimers of the capital pool is 3.8 thousand, so almost 4,000 claims. Unique wallets claiming from the capital pool, and the unique wallets claiming from the code pool is 122. So there's significantly less claims happening from the code, which should be obvious. There's less coders as opposed to people can provide capital. But what's interesting is that even the amount of more claimed from the code providers is around 200,000, and the amount from the capital is around 450,000. So twice as much more is being claimed. So from these statistics, the coders are not in a rush, let's say, to claim from their pools, and in the context of staking these rewards, what do these things indicate to you all who are these code providers? Is it a good feeling? Does it feel like there's something to improve on? How does this fit in with that context of opening up the infrastructure to stake those unclaimed more as a coder?
That's a great question. It's cool to see these statistics. I poked around the Explorer a little bit, but it's nice to have a beautiful interface to actually see them. And it's interesting. I think there are 5, 6, 7,000 capital contributors now. So if 3,000 of them have claimed, it's around half, basically. Whereas there's close to 300 unique addresses on the code side. So if you've got 100 or so, it's about a third of the people have claimed, but it sounds like they're also claiming less if they're less than half of the total claims, right? Because both buckets are the same size. 24% of emissions go to capital and 24% go to coders. But I'm not overly surprised. A lot of the code contributors are OG crypto people who are very long term oriented, right? I don't think I've got around to doing a single claim yet of, of more, and I've been one of the most active contributors. So, historically, I've been very well served by holding tokens for many years, and I think that's sort of indicative of somebody who's been in the industry for a while, right? Is they're about building value over time, right? Because everybody who's been in a while is like, oh, I wish I held more Bitcoin. I wish I held more Ethereum, right? And that sort of has an effect on your mentality, right? You have a mentality of a saver, of somebody who wants to save the value over time because you understand, how these projects, if successful, can perform, right? So I think that's probably just a difference between the average time in the industry for capital providers might be shorter than the average time for somebody who's a code contributor. But yeah, the staking is going to have, I think, an outsized effect on increasing that, right? Because we see, in the on-chain data, tens of millions of dollars of effective virtual STETH from the power factor on the capital side, which means like 20% of all weight in the capital side now is coming from people staking their more rewards, right? Which is great. Because I think in the first week or so, it was like 10%. Now it's 20%. It's clearly growing as people realize they can, get more MOR tokens by doing the staking. They're leaning into that, and I expect we'll see something similar, but maybe even at a higher level on code contributors, because so many of them are long-term oriented, right? I mean, I often say I wish I had had these tools in the early Bitcoin days, like 2012, 2013. There weren't even multi-sig, there was no end-lock time. So we didn't have the functions available to lock them over long term, but I sure wish I could have, right? And so now that we have the tools, I'm definitely going to be first in line to want to use them. So yeah, no, I think this is it's a huge improvement because the staking overall will lean the rewards towards those that are aligned with the success of Morpheus, and not just here to dump the tokens tomorrow and disappear.
I think if you ask developers if there is a way to build open source and plan for the future at the same time, that it would be a short list you'd get back. And this, I think, is a real easy way to code your way into some sort of long-term wealth that doesn't exist.
Yeah. So I got a little prototype teaser I could show you just to kind of give you an idea of, the ability for anybody to build anything. I mean,
Yeah, let's do it. So
for
if
instance, I'm
anyone,
building a fully modal interface. All right, if
Oh,
you guys can see my screen share, for people that aren't seeing it, this is running adaptively in real time as a fully self-adaptive neural network system. It's not trained at the moment. This is capable of image and video output. It's listening to audio. You can see the speaker line down bottom. This is the video, so you're able to see those data metrics feedback in real time. You can see my head moving and the metrics change. And this is fully adjust so that anybody can have it. And the goal here is to get a system that can watch you and talk with you like a human being. Right, so this is a full training set. You can upload, download the whole bit. Now this is fairly well fleshed out, but again, this is still not the full deal. It needs to be integrated fully to the network, and guys that are real crypto pros can step in and finish out the hard work for that part of it. And that's where it takes a team, not an individual, right? So this is the kind of stuff you can look forward to, because anybody's dreams can be made reality now, and we have a way to network that and deal with all of the overhead that would normally be involved with corporations and eliminate that. That's incredible. Everybody could be using stuff like this anytime.
wow, very nice. So anybody who's listening, I'm gonna just describe what we just saw. Basically, a field of these different codes that was making the M logo, the imagery, and as Mystic was moving his mouse over, you can see it warping and adjusting. But also, there was code that is visualizing what's happening with his camera so that it's reacting that he's looking this way and that way. And when he's describing, yeah, to be able to interact with us because it's also, able to track what we're up to and have this like personal relationship with it. That is, oh yeah, there we go. Black flag broker in there. That's really cool. And I think it's actually a great kind of inspiration that if people are coding, and I think there's a distinction, like you can code for websites for doing all types of stuff, and maybe you don't know so much about blockchain, but we also have people in the community that are really into that form of coding. And so Morpheus could be this place where the marriage of those things happen when you have the tools. That's kind of been discussed that, okay, I can code these cool, like Mystic just showed us, these cool sites and this cool interactive experience, but he didn't particularly have to start putting wallets on it and put a token on it. And then comes in the rest of the community to kind of add in that element of how does that become important. I think that's really a cool example.
Great, exactly. And that's the thing, right? A team is always better than an individual.
Nice, that's nice. Does anybody in the audience have any questions they want to ask? Have any like thing that is kind of uncertain, or how we feeling in the audience? Everybody seems really engaged. Got a nice little turnout. If anyone's listening, again, this is being recorded. We're gonna try to have these kind of calls with different people in the community every other Friday. So we'll have another one in 2 weeks. And yeah, we'll see who we get up on next. Okay, not seeing
Helios, maybe
Yeah.
I can address some of the frequently asked questions that I've seen, just to kick us
Oh
off.
yes.
So, one thing I often see is the current smart contract architecture supports one amount of weights for one address. So people are asking if they could, use different amounts of staking for the same address. The answer is no. You have to pick one staking period for your address, and you can always update that, right? You could change your staking period from 1 years to 2 years to 3 years. But if you change the period, just keep in mind that the smart contract will recalculate your power factor, right? And effectively, the game theory is the highest power factors are right now, right? So if a year from now you changed your power factor from 4 years to 1 year, you'd get a much lower power factor, right? Or if even you went from 3 years to 2.9 years, a year from now, you'd get a much lower power factor because the power is in relation to how much future dilution there's going to be. Remember, that's how the time curve works. Is it's looking at how many tokens exist today, how many tokens will be emitted in the future. So the highest dilution in the emissions ever, right, is always at the beginning, right? Because the supply curve tapers out over time. Within a couple of years, there'll be 10 million more in circulation. And so think about 2 years from now, if you were to do, uh, a lot of, 6 year staking 2 years from now, well, there won't be a 10.7x available on power because after 10 million are in circulation, there's only 42 million more that will ever exist, right? So the maximum power factor would be 4.2. So just kind of think through, if you've got code contributions, it's worth taking advantage of the staking now versus later. And if you update the staking, you can always do that, but it will reduce your power factor if you pick a period that's lower. So just keep that in mind as you're using or touching the address when you make changes to it.
Thank you very much for that. We got someone wants to come speak. Nachos, invite you up. What's going on, Nachos?
Hey, hi guys. Great to be here. Quite excited about what you guys are building. Just one quick question. I was wondering about what kinds of projects Morpheus is, like what kinds of projects are being built inside the community right now, and in terms of smart agents, what are some of the better use cases that team is excited about that they'd want to support and push forward?
That's a great question. There's a great coder, Ruckchuck, that is the maintainer for the Smart Agents repo. And to my knowledge, the 009 version is in testing and getting um, packaged up for install right now, and includes a bunch of upgrades to the way that you can use the agents, especially the coordinator or delegator agent, to connect it to other smart agents based on the intent of the user. So I would look at the more agents repo if you want to see all of the latest. But that's some really cool stuff that's getting built. Noun Space launched on More 20, and they've done great launching beautiful front end interfaces for people to connect their smart agents and use them all on chain, but have like a uh, MySpace type interface available. So yeah, if you go to more.org, there's a whole ecosystem tab if you want to see all the different projects in the ecosystem of what people are building on Morpheus. That's a great place to get started.
Yeah, just like to add up to that, I definitely saw those list of projects that are already on the GitHub and on the ecosystem page as well. Quite good projects. What I was wondering was that, like, the question also is mostly because we're also thinking of building something, and then like the main thing that I had questions about was if we are eventually thinking of building like a smart agent UI and like a smart agent backing it, what would be something that might be cool to build and like something that might get support.
Well, I've often said I think the low hanging fruit is the existing popular use cases on Web3, right? And just giving them a smart agent interface. So I mean swaps on Uniswap. I mean yields from Compound or Aave. All of those popular smart contracts, you could make them available to a much larger audience by creating a smart agent. So then people can just talk to the dApp. They could just talk to the smart contract and tell it what they want to do, right? So I don't think it's about exploring or discovering new use cases. I think we already know what the popular use cases in Web3 are. So let's take those popular use cases and create smart agents for them. Is a good place to start. So I would look at the most popular dApps in the world and start wrapping them into smart agents, making them available, right? That way people can start staking towards them when builder rewards go live. But that'll be fairly soon. If you look at the repo, it seems most of the code is done for the builder reward smart contract. I saw somebody was testing it out the other day on the test net, and they were able to roll it out. It still needs audits, and that usually takes a couple of weeks, but it looks like it'll be fairly soon that builder rewards can go live.
To answer your question a little bit, Nacho, if you go and you clone the agent's repo and you find a feature that you want to add to it, jump onto the Google forum. You can find them, links to it all over the place, and suggest it. And that will get the process rolling. It'll force you to think about your delivery. And then when you have that in your mind's eye, then you'll know what to build. But there is no one master list.
Yep. And that's a great distinction. Maxwell is referring to things related to the reference implementation. And so you go through that MRC process. But if you just want to build something independent, you don't need anybody's permission. And there's no sort of central coordination. It's whatever you want to launch.
Yeah. Everybody should have 10 more 20 projects to their name, at least.
Start with one, grow from there.
Everyone,
yeah.
one's fine. All right.
All right. Nacho, do you have any more cues? Do you feel satisfied? Good
No,
question.
thanks a lot, guys. I think those are some good answers. Just where can I find these MRCs and the form that you just mentioned?
I think the form is listed in the code providers channel here on Discord. And then the MRCs are all listed on GitHub. If you go to the MRC repo under Morpheus AIs, you'll find all the current MRCs. But again, that's only if you want to make a improvement to the protocol or the reference smart contracts. You don't have to go through the MRC process to create an independent smart agent. Go ahead and do it.
Got it. But thanks a lot for that as well. Thanks, guys.
Sure. Absolutely.
In the chat, I linked this More 20 channel, and in that channel is all of those discussions for all the different numbers. So from there, that'll link to different GitHubs, and you can kind of find that. And I think that's cool to take that up, and I think it's a good point that at first these things will look like what we already expect, and as in some DeFi stuff. I'm gonna swap. I'm gonna buy the dip agent. I'm gonna have like a stable coin arbitrage agent, which we really need because people are writing this code, and the people who operate those bots, they're more sophisticated with code. So it'd be nice that regular users could do some of this. And I think it's interesting also to think in time. This happens quite a lot. It happens all the time, actually, with new technology. The first thing we do is we imitate what we already know. And after a certain period, there's a breakthrough where things are changing and now something new gets introduced. And this is, why I love Ethereum, is that there was blockchain was going on and they're like, okay, there's this other thing going on, which is smart contracts. And this was something that shifted and opened up the entire space. So I think Morpheus is in this nice position as well with the kind of bright minds that are around. That first is, okay, we'll just do what we're doing, but we'll do it in this different way with smart agents, with this decentralized network here. And in time after that, then the innovation can also happen. Like, wow, now that we have these tools and now that this works this way, there can be a new way to look at stuff. And so excited for that in the future as a kind of designer person who likes to think of strange stuff. But at first, good question, Nacho. Like, what are we looking forward to? What are we doing? Probably a lot of the same of what we are doing, and then more will kind of come out of that. If you're in the chat, okay, Black Flag said he could also help out if anybody has some kind of questions or some type of want to navigate to get to a project. Vodka also had a question, which we touched on a little bit, but worth going back to, about the advantages and ease of compensating these co-contributors in an open source and DAO scenario. And we spoke a little bit about it, but maybe Maxwell and Davey, if you want to just touch on it again, like what is really the advantage of having this system where co-contributors are able to submit stuff? If it's useful, then it's being implemented and they're being rewarded and compensated with the token. What do you guys think?
Well, I think the big thing is just it automates rewards, right? That's the huge thing is you're getting away from doing all of this manually to once an address is added to the smart contract, it just sends out the reward automatically every day, every night, every week, every month, right? And so if you look at the recent More 20 paper, which was really well done by Ruckshuk and Tom Anon and other contributors, they spent months really fine tuning that. But it's an amazing exploration of if you want to use More 20 for recurring payments, you can do that, right? Set it and forget it. Somebody deposits, stake ETH, and it sends the yield to the developer every month. Great. Like that's how you do credit card style payments in Web3 that recur all the time, and the person doesn't have to take any action, right? They don't have to do a new transaction. They don't have to pay any gas. They don't have to remember to renew their subscription, right? Or they don't have to prepay for years, right? That's not been possible in Web3 until right now, until More 20 went live, right? So just subscription-based revenue is now possible in Web3, right? That's a huge use case, right? There are tens of billions of dollars of software as a service companies, right? And today they all have to use a credit card processor, right? All of a sudden now anybody with ETH is able to have a recurring payment for something. So that's number one. Number two, you have a project, you want to launch it basically as an NFT, right? As a non-fungible agent. And now, I'm describing MRC21, you have a standard way to pay out everybody who contributed to the project, right? So that's the second use case is, I just want to automatically reward all my contributors. I didn't even need a token. I'm just using this smart contract as a way to direct those rewards, right? So again, somebody can stake ETH and those rewards can automatically be given to the contributors, right? And then third, of course, is people that want to do fair launches. If you want to create your own More 20 contract, you need your own token like Noun Space for your project, cool. This is a way to automatically reward your capital providers, your coders, your compute providers, everybody involved. So there's effectively three different tools that have emerged, right? One for recurring payments, one for rewarding a small team that doesn't have their own token, or one for basically let people do their own fair launch, right, with More 20. And so if you haven't read that paper, I really encourage you to read the More 20 paper that came out a few days ago. It's got the math, it's got the code, it's got the references, it talks through this entire framework. But that's one of the biggest things that Morpheus has done is pioneer this new way of doing automated recurring revenue. Like for me, that's huge. That's the first innovation that effectively took off on Morpheus with the smart contracts.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at Morpheus and Nounspace and AO and everybody that's used the fair launch smart contracts, to see $1 billion in a few months go through, and people using this broadly for automated recurring revenue is really, really cool. So yeah, the next step is effectively to make that easier for other people to do. So now there's a whole dashboard where you don't even have to write any code. You just describe your project, fill out the form, push a button, and it'll pop out a More 20 smart contract for you. Right. That's lowers the bar from needing a dev team to literally just being able to be a founder and want to launch a project. Right. So can't wait to see more dashboards like that roll out and basically just make it easy for people to use what's been pioneered here.
There's a bunch of more things, excuse the pun, happening at more.software that we can do either in a couple weeks or whenever, but just know that there is a weekly deliverable of features that you're going to be able to use to get more involved with the system, no matter what level of development or coder you are. It's going to be built for everybody.
Very nice. Thank you for that question, Baka, and thank both of you for the answer. It looks like we're all good on questions. Did anybody just have any final remarks? I think we could wrap it up. For anybody who just joined us, feel free to take a listen to the recording. It should be out later today. And anybody that's listening remotely, feel free to also drop any questions that may have arisen from this talk in general chat whenever you do get online. And we're sure to help. Someone's sure to help find you the answer. Tiger's maybe saying something, maybe a thanks. Did anyone on stage want to give any final remarks as we close down the call? It's been really nice having an actual code provider up here, although we've had some before, but getting Maxwell's opinion and kind of views on what he's working on and what's been being built in the background is to me really special. Being someone that just admires code and doesn't write any, just get to talk. Anybody would have any final thoughts or things they want to share before we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank you for putting on the AMA. I love the idea of doing it every other Friday and just getting different contributors up here. Like get Ruckchuck up here to talk about agents, right? Get Ryan up here to talk about compute. Like let's go through all of the people building different parts of the platform is awesome.
And if you have any suggestions, wants, needs, reach out.
Very nice. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody who's listening at another time. And look out for our next call in 2 weeks, which is penciled in for August 23rd, where we'll hopefully we'll have some other builders, someone else in the space. So look out for that. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy your weekend.